So we should have our textbooks open to page 613, and we're going to look at our first lesson in chapter 8 on circumference. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Maybe it sounded a little elementary, but it was important to review the different parts of a circle. All right, now we're going to focus in on circumference, but first we'll talk a little bit more about the parts. I do not like this, so you can just scribble that all out. It won't scribble for me. Yeah, I don't like that. All right. I prefer on the next page, actually 2 pages away, I prefer this diagram here, which shows you that the diameter is all the way across the circle through the center, and the radius is basically halfway across, or from the center to the outside edge of the circle. And the circumference is all the way around. So you can put a little star here on that page. All right. Because that is a good diagram. Now we also learned that a line that doesn't go through the center but hits 2 points on the outer edge, that's called a chord. All right, so there's another part that you can label in there and put CHORD and label that. All right, but we'll be focusing on diameter, radius, and circumference in this lesson. Let's go back to that other page. All right, I love this definition, a circle. What is a circle? You could, I guess, describe it in a bunch of different ways, but this is cool. It's the set of all points in a plane, so a flat surface, that are the same distance from a point. So if you just draw a point and then draw all the other points that are a certain distance away, so draw all the points that are 3 inches away from another point. All right, so over here you can see I'm gonna draw on this screen to the left. Okay, so if you put a point and then you measure this direction 3 inches and put a dot, and then here 3 inches and put a dot, and then here 3 inches and put a dot, and keep doing that, you'll get a circle with all the dots that are 3 inches away from that center. So that is officially your circle. So I like that definition. The circumference is the distance around a circle. So that's if you were to measure from a point, and then I'll go all the way around, measure all that back to the same point. Okay, you get the circumference. Diameter is distance across the circle, but through the center, and the radius is the distance from the center to any point on the circle. All right, we're done with this page. No more on that page. I really do not like this, the way they write this. All right, now if you look at it, it might make sense to you, but it's not super useful especially when you would just normally do this in your head or quickly calculate on a calculator. But this says that the diameter, you could get the diameter by taking the radius and multiplying it by 2. And you can find the radius by taking the diameter and dividing by 2. That's all this means. All right, the diameter of a circle is twice the radius, or 2 times the radius. And the radius is half of the diameter. So I would say that this part up here is helpful, and this part down here tends to confuse people often. So we're not going to really focus on that. But if you want to look at this, that's awesome. So if we look at example 1, the diameter of a circle is 14 inches. Find the radius. Well, it says the radius is always half of the diameter, half of the diameter. So what's half of 14? 7. Now you could use this formula here that they give you and plug in the diameter. D is 14, so then 14 divided by 2 is 7. So that's your answer, but I just think it's just a lot of work for something that's so simple. All right, and then here's the opposite. This time they give you from the center to the outside, which is your radius. How do you get the diameter? Well, let's see. The diameter is always twice its radius. So if we have the radius, we just times it by 2. 8 times 2 is 16. And so the diameter is 16. All right, so if they give you the diameter, divide it by 2 to get the radius, like this one here. If they give you the radius, then times it by 2 to get the diameter. All right, so go ahead and pause and try these 4 problems, and then when you unpause, I'll turn the answers on so you can see if you got them right or not. Cool. All right, how'd you do? For part A, you would have simply said, oh, well, I have the diameter, that's all the way across, so I just have to divide it by 2 to get the radius, which comes to 11.5 centimeters. For part B, you would have said, oh, I've been given the radius, which is only halfway across, so I'd have to double it times 2 to get 6 centimeters. And then part C, you have 16, and you divide that by 2 since it's the diameter and get the radius of 8. And then D, you would say, oh, they gave me the radius of 5.2, so I'm going to multiply that by 2 to get the diameter, which gives me 10.4 centimeters. Now, they didn't, it's no unit was given, so I can't really give a unit for my answer. All right, so just 10.4, or you could write units, I guess, but all right. So that is simple, but for some reason, there's some students that just, it doesn't click for it first, so rewatch, and you can also practice on the quizzes a couple times until you understand it, okay? All right, let's now move on to circumference. Okay, here we have circumference, and you know that circumference is the distance around the outside of a circle. It's like the perimeter. It's a special name for the perimeter of a circle. All right, perimeter of a circle has a special name, and that's circumference. Now, it's hard to measure that outside, especially with a ruler, something that doesn't bend. So what we can do is we can find the circumference using a formula that all you have to know is the diameter or the radius, and you can plug those numbers into the formula and get your answer. If you're given the diameter, then all you would do to get the circumference right here is you'd take pi and multiply it by the diameter, and then you'd know what the circumference is. Now, if you're given the radius, the r here, then you have to use this formula and do 2 times pi times the radius and get the circumference that way. All right, so this is a great little key concept here to pay attention to. And what we're going to do is we're going to plug in the appropriate numbers into the appropriate spot of the formula and find the circumference here. Now, one little thing to be aware of is that depending on the way you approximate pi, so remember, pi's digits go on forever and don't repeat. So most of the time when we're using pi, we're approximating it or rounding it, or using a special value like 22/7 here that equals about pi, very close to pi, but not exactly. So these are called approximations. And the more decimals you use, the more exact your answer will be. But oftentimes we just approximate it to 3.14 as good enough. Okay, good enough. It's not exact, but it's good enough. All right. So in some problems, people just leave the pi in your answer instead of actually using an approximation like 3.14 and multiplying. They just never multiply. They just leave the pi there so they can actually keep it exact and not approximate. All right. So let's, after that little conversation here, estimate. To estimate the circumference of a circle, you can use 3 for pi, since pi is approximately equal to 3. So if you're just trying to do something in your head, you could get about the right answer to see maybe if your answer would be reasonable or not. Just real quick in your head, think of pi as 3, do 3 times whatever, and do it that way, okay? So let's see how to find the circumference of a circle with a radius of 21 inches. Well, what's given here? Key is what's given. The key is that we're given the radius. So when we're given the radius, we'd use this formula here. See, it has an r in it, so we're going to replace that r with the given radius. If it told us the diameter, well, we'd use this formula. So you use one or the other, depending on what's given. All right, so they gave us the radius, so we're going to use the formula that has an r in it. All right, we replace that r with 21. All right, and in this case, they use the approximation of 21. I'm sorry, as of 22/7 for pi. Typically, we're not going to do that. We're just going to put 3.14 in and call it a day. All right, but in this case, they put 22/7. The reason being, well, 7 and 21 cross cancel really nicely when but typically we're not going to get numbers that are divisible by 7. So if you do randomly have a number divisible by 7 as your radius or diameter, well, then that's a good time to use 22/7 as your approximation. But typically we just plug in 3.14 and multiply it all together. All right, so back to the problem. So we chose this formula. We replaced pi with an approximation for pi. We replaced the radius with 21 because that's what's given. And then we just multiply. All right, 2 times the approximation for pi times the radius, and we get our answer. See how it changed from equal to approximately, the symbol we use here? Well, that's because we're not using exactly pi, we're using an approximation for pi. So all of our answers aren't going to be exact, they're going to be close or approximately the answer. Okay, so there you go. There's part of the problem. Now I'm going to pause. You can pause and try the gods and then see the answers. See if you can get these answers that I accidentally left up. I will show the work over to the left. So part E, we have a diameter all the way across. You see that? All the way across is 70 inches. So we look up here and we choose this formula because we've been given the diameter. So we write that formula down. Then we replace pi with an approximation for pi. I'm going to use 3.14 in this case, although we now have a diameter. All right. I'll play their little game here. They gave a diameter that's a multiple of 7, so it's going to actually work nicely with 22/7. And I replace the d with 70 because that's what the diameter is. And I could have done 3.14, but I chose to use 22/7 because my diameter will cross simplify nicely. So now I'm going to put that over 1, simplify, 7 goes into 7 once, 7 goes into 70 10 times, and then multiply the numerators and denominators and get 220, and that's going to be inches. So my circumference there is 220. Now on got it F, they gave me the radius this time. So I am going to use the other formula. I'm going to use 2 times pi times radius. I'm going to replace the pi. Well, we have a fraction here and with a 7 in the numerator. So it's going to cross cancel nicely with 22/7. So I replace the pi with 22/7 again, and I get 7/8 for the radius. All right. So I can see that I can cross cancel the 7s and get 1 and 1. I can also cross cancel this 8 and this 2 and get 4 and 1. So I end up, when I multiply the numerators and denominators, I get 22 over 4. Oh, I could have simplified that as well, which simplifies down to 11 halves, which gives me 5.5 feet. Oops. Okay, so we've figured out how to do that and using the different formulas depending on what's given in the problem. All right, now we have up here a problem where we'll be using the approximation of 3.14 for pi, you see, instead of 22/7. The reason is because the diameter given here is 23 feet, all right, of this big famous tower clock called Big Ben. We're trying to figure out the circumference, so the distance around the outside. Whenever we're doing that, we are, you can hear my sons running around. I'm recording right now, guys. One sec. Okay. So they give us the diameter. That's given. So we use this formula with the D in it. And because that diameter is 23, it doesn't play nice with the number 7 in the denominator. So we're not going to use 22/7 as our approximation. We're going to use 3.14 instead. All right. So replace the pi with your approximation for pi. Replace D diameter with 23 because that's what's given. And multiply. And we get our circumference that's approximately going to be 72.2 feet. Make sure you label if a unit's given. And there we go. So you can see the answer there for got it G. You try it yourself though, please. Pause, try it yourself. See if you can get 12.6. All right, pause, and then I'll show you how to do it as well. The diameter of the fence, a circular fence, is being placed to surround a tree. The diameter of the fence is 4 feet. So since we've been given the diameter, we are going to choose to use the circumference formula that has diameter in it. Oops, I forgot pi. There we go. Pi times diameter. So circumference equals, noticing that the given diameter is 4 feet, right? That doesn't play nice with 7, the number 7 of 22/7. So I'm just going to use 3.14 times the diameter, which is 4. And when I multiply that, let's see, I get 3.14 times 4, 16.15. Multiply, and I get 12.56. Since it says to round to the nearest tenth, I chop it off after the tenths place, and this 6 here tells me to round up to approximately, I should have used those symbols, 12.6. And what are my units? Looks like feet. All right, there we have it. That's the lesson. Good luck. I hope you guys are having a safe and enjoyable day. Have a great day.